Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules, and at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. Welcome to a very special edition of Binnall of America. So special that it's coming at you just a few days after Christmas. It's sort of a gift in a lot of ways to the longtime Binnall of America listeners who, when they heard we were getting the show back up and running, tonight's guest was one of the most requested people that I heard from. Almost as soon as I said, heard, people were requesting. As soon as I said I was going to get the show up and running, they were like, "You got to get Adam Davies back on. You got to bring Adam Davies back on." So I've got Adam Davies back on the show, and I want to apologize, I guess, ahead of time. Adam already knows I'm a little under the weather tonight, but I'm gonna tough it out, and hopefully we can tap into that classic Binnall Davies magic that you've come to love over the years here on Binnall of America. I was just saying to Adam before we started, it's pretty amazing. The last time we talked to Adam Davies for BOA was in May of 2017, which is really crazy that it's been over 6 years since Adam Davies was on the program. And for long-time Binnall American listeners, and probably a lot of people maybe who are only tangentially even familiar with the show, probably our most famous episode ever went down on October 4th, 2015. That's when Adam and John Carlson appeared on the show to talk about their encounter with this portal in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, and it's become a famous episode of Binnall of America. People always mention it to me. I think it's been cited in a couple of books. I've heard other people talk about it on podcasts. It's just a strange sort of thing where it's like, oh, wow, that was, I'll listen to the show. People are like, yeah, then there's this episode of Binnall of America with Adam Davies. It's like, wait, that's the Portal episode they're talking about. People always, everywhere I go somewhere and talk about Binnall of America or something like that, people will ask me about the Portal episode. So I'd say it's our most famous episode, and that would probably explain why when I talk about bringing the show back, people are always like, you got to get Adam Davies back. You got to get Adam Davies back. So it's been a crazy 6 years since the last time I talked to you, Adam. I'm stunned it's been so long. How have you been in the interim since 2017 when last time we talked?
I'm good. I mean, I want to thank you, first of all, for those matching pajamas you sent me. Your audience can't see them, but we're both wearing them. I'm not sure teddy bears are my thing, Tim, but I'll wear them even though they're a bit itchy. No, in seriousness, I'm good. I mean, one thing I'd say is you have charted things that I have done for many years now. So if your listeners are interested, it's almost like a historic thing when we go back. I think you were one of the first interviews I ever did, and I don't do that many interviews, maximum a couple of a year. And in those interviews, you can see all the way through it's almost like a progression. So yeah. I like doing your interviews because I feel like it's a pause where I almost, before the interview, I reflect and I think about what I have done in that time so I can talk to you about it. So I've got a few things that I'll mention. Bigfoot stroke related stuff, and then one very creepy story I'll tell you. And so we'll go from whenever you're ready. We'll talk about those.
All right. Did you say Bigfoot stroke?
No, Bigfoot, and then one's very creepy story.
Oh, that's the British.
Not a Bigfoot stroke.
Yeah, I thought for a minute, I'm like, oh shit.
I'd probably said something, misspoke or something, but no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm like, oh shit. I feel like a real dick now. Not only have I not talked to him in 6 years, I completely missed the fact that he had a stroke. What kind of shitty friend am I?
I'm pretty healthy. There's nothing wrong with me right now. As I said to you, I gave up smoking in February, so that was a good move for me.
I know.
But no, I don't have anything. I don't have anything physically or mentally wrong with me right now.
Well, people get just to be complete assholes, we'll get to the portal when we get to the portal. So, folks who are tuning in for Portal Talk, you're going to have to just listen, sit back, relax, pour a cup of coffee. Who knows when we're going to get to the fucking portal? We'll get to it. So the last time I talked to you, last time I saw you,
were we in San Diego? Were we at the Whaley House?
We hung out in San Diego. We hung out for
we were at the Whaley
San
House.
Diego.
Do you want to tell people what the Whaley House is?
Yeah, you were working as a tour guide at Whaley House, which is like the oldest haunted house in, the most haunted house in San Diego, in the old-timey part of San Diego. It's like a time capsule kind of thing. It hasn't changed like in hundreds of years, sort of, from when they first settled the city. It's a little bubble within the big city. It's kind of, your nostalgic-y history kind of area.
Yeah, I was doing some volunteer work because there, predominantly I was a teacher, but I was doing that part-time. And it's got a reputation as one of the most haunted houses in the whole of the United States, allegedly. And I thought it'd be good fun to do it, it's something different.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of ghostly experiences while you were volunteering there?
I never saw a ghost, and I have got a story to tell you. I'll tell you straight after this because it links in with that. It's very strange. I never actually saw one. I want to say that predominantly I'm a researcher into cryptids, and I think they're physical creatures. So I'm not trying to confuse the two, just to set the scene. But I did spend about a year working in that place, and what I got was I feel like I got a feeling when they were around, which was a bit like when you go on the top of a roller coaster and you feel like butterflies in your stomach. I used to feel that. And then the people with the EVP, when the ghost hunters would come in, they'd regularly hear my name going, Adam, 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 all that. I was always very polite, yeah? And I saw orbs, but of course people will say, well, that's a light reflection, even though I kept seeing a green orb quite a lot, and a blue one in the parlour, which was allegedly one of the most haunted places. But I never physically saw a whole apparition in all the time I was there. But there was one time, and it's funny how your mind works, yeah? It's funny how your mind works. So there was one time, it was after you had left. Now, the weather in San Diego is always like in the 70s and sunny, isn't it? It's a classic thing. Yeah. But there was one time when I had to lock it up, that house, at something like 2 a.m. So me and this other guy were working. Sometimes they'd have private showings for people. After the place had shut, they'd have private showings. And we had this grouping of guys who came for a stag party. The guy, a bachelor party. The guy didn't know that it was going to be there. He was blindfolded and taken there. And then we did we talked about the different rooms and everything else. And they had fun. But the guy who was with me, he didn't feel well. So he asked me if I'd lock up. And then at that point, a storm started. Yeah. So it's like 1:30 a.m. There's a storm starting. I'm on my own in one of the most haunted houses in the United States.
Yeah.
And it was. I was laughing at the irony of it. I had to teach 8 o'clock the next morning, and I had to get back from this place to my house, get some sleep, and then teach. And as many of your listeners know, teaching's a high energy job. So I was like, I really need some sleep. And I was like, what I'd learned to do was not look into the courthouse when I was locking up. Because that for me was the creepiest part of the house. That was where I got the most sensations of things happening.
Right.
And so to what I had to do to go out was to set the alarm in this place. And then you run literally down the corridor in the Whaley House to get out the door and shut it, yeah? While the alarm's going off. Not like super fast, not like a sprint.
I used to work retail. I know what's safe sort of deal. You hit the thing and you got to get the fuck out of the building.
And you've got a certain
Yeah, exactly,
So I was like, don't look in the courthouse. Whatever you do, don't look in the courthouse, yeah? So I was like, I'm not going to look in that courthouse.
But you looked, didn't you?
What did I do? I looked. Yeah, I looked. And I just saw, and it was the only time in the entire year I was there I saw something physical. I just saw what looked like a head. Just a head floating across a little bit of the courthouse.
Shit.
Just that, right? But my reaction was interesting because my reaction was like, I shut the door, get out, drive home. I'm lying in bed and I'm really angry with myself. And I was lying in bed going, that fucking head. I knew I shouldn't have looked at that thing. That fucking head. And that was all I was thinking. And I was like lying there for a few hours, irritated. Not the fact that I'd seen this thing. I just wanted to go to sleep because I had a job to do. You know what I mean? And I thought,
Yeah.
So that was the only time.
Was it like a full-on head?
I saw a side thing, like the side.
It must have been so brief. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like going across.
Yeah.
I very clearly saw it, but I didn't like have a really good look at it.
Yeah.
But it was the only time, and it was floating across a little bit. You know, so that was weird. But I never saw anything else there, and I was there a lot. You know, I was there a lot. I did feel it, and things called out my name. But I never saw anything per se apart from those orbs, and I know they can be light reflection. Now, I want to say two things. I mean, first of all, in those instances, there is something called cognitive priming. So if you're in a haunted house, you're more likely to, and you want to see a ghost, you're more likely to see them. But as I say, I was there all the time. This is the only incident where I feel like I saw one. The second thing is, as we go through, I'm going to talk about some of the things that really struck me as important adventures over the last 5 years. But most of the time in my research, nothing happens. I am out all the time, every day, for example, doing a cryptid research, and 99.9% of the time, I'm having a nice time in the woods, and nothing happens. What I'm doing in my conversations with you is emphasizing those times when something strange has happened. So it's like a kind of condensed into our conversation today, and I want to say that I don't want people to think, you know, every time I go out I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, because that's not going to happen. Let me tell you, most of the time, if you're doing, say, cryptid research or even paranormal research, I would think, but I wouldn't call myself a paranormal researcher. Most of the time, nothing's going to happen, and quite right too. Yeah, so there we are. But I thought that was kind of interesting. So that was San Diego.
And then you moved on to you back in the Bigfoot games, what you were saying earlier. Bigfoot. So, because you came to America, interestingly, from what I recall from our conversations in the past, you came to America first on sort of an expedition looking for Bigfoot. That's when you had the picture of the weird thing by the picnic table.
That's right. I think that was in 2012. That was in 2012.
It was a long time ago now. That's crazy.
Yeah, I came here then. Well, it's funny how things turn out. You know, I would say I'm quite a planner as a person normally, but the most significant things for good or bad that's ever happened to me have happened to me almost by accident. You know, I don't know why that is, but it's the way it is. So that was the first Bigfoot thing. Now, would you like me to talk more about the Bigfoot, or do you want me to tell you another of the paranormal stories? It's up to you.
Well, the paranormal stories. Let's go with paranormal.
Well, let's go with the second. Let's go with the second one, and then I'll move on to the Bigfoot thing if you like, because I think this is interesting. Because so there's a few, but I wanted to tell you this story because I thought this was kind of interesting. You okay there still? Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's giving me another connection is unstable, but I have it plugged into.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, it's plugged into the fucking thing. I don't know why it's...
So it's still working?
Yeah, okay. I don't know why it's telling me it's unstable. Let me just see here. Hold on. Yeah. I don't know. Well, it's gone away, so now we'll just... go ahead.
Yeah. So that I wanted to tell you this. I thought if there's one story I want to tell you tonight, which is of a paranormal nature, I want to tell you this one. So in February of this year, I was in West Virginia, and what I was doing in West Virginia was I was essentially doing some Bigfoot research. Yeah, I thought that's a good time. It's a good time to go there. People will often say, well, I won't do research in winter, it's too cold. It's like, have at it, go for it, because, that's a great time to set up trail cameras. You can see a long way as well, you get some binoculars, you can see and you can look for things. It's a really good time. I do research all year round, but I like doing research in winter. I think it works very well.
Because there's nothing on the trees. Yeah, you can get a much better view of the area. Yeah,
it's great. So I went to West Virginia. I went with a friend of mine to West Virginia, and we stayed in this house. Now, the reason I wanted to mention it is because it cuts to that Whaley House thing. Now, you remember just to start that Whaley House thing, I told you I had those like butterflies in my stomach and things like that when I thought things were around. Anyway, I stayed in this house. And this old house, and I was setting up the trail cameras, but every time I went into the back bedroom, because there are a few bedrooms in this place, I had that feeling, very strange feeling. And I thought, that is seriously weird. Seriously, seriously weird. So, on the last night, I decided I'd just set up a trail camera. The night before the last night, I decided I'd just set up a trail camera on one of those heaters. On those space heater things? I can't remember what they're called here.
Yeah.
It's got a long pole. It's a long pole because it was still cold in February in West Virginia. So I tied it to that and just pointed it in the corner of the room. Friend's got a dog, and every time the dog was going in, it was looking at things in the corner. Do you know what I mean? It was looking in...
Yeah, something was... Yeah,
I thought there's something kind of off here. So I get home and I didn't check the trail camera at the time. Got home, pull the trail camera out, and there's a photograph of a face on the trail camera. A very clear face from there onwards. Very clear.
Oh God!
I've got it now. The front door was locked. The door to this bedroom was locked. Nothing was taken. So you have a couple of explanations here.
And I presume you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, right? It's not like
out in the middle of nowhere, in a small place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was country, very country is the best way to describe it. Okay. So you got two explanations. The first explanation is that somebody broke in to the house in the night, in the middle of the night.
While you were sleeping.
While I was sleeping, while the other person in the house was sleeping, while the dog was sleeping. The dog is a pit bull, and got past all of us without disturbing any of us, including a dog, and went to the back bedroom, unlocked it, took one photograph on the trail camera, left without stealing anything in the middle of the night, and got past us undetected again. Yeah? Now, that's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Or there's a paranormal explanation, that it's some sort of spirit or ghost. Now, most people, I think, even in those circumstances, would be inclined to say, it's a weirdo. Yeah, it's just a frigging weirdo who's done that. And I could understand why.
But I suppose. But I find that, I think, someone who would say that would think that we were crazy for thinking it's paranormal. But I'd be like, dude, you're crazy for thinking that this incredibly implausible scenario is the case. You know what I mean? To me, it's like the paranormal is way more plausible here than someone broke into the house, snuck in, got past the dog, especially, somehow got in the room, knew there was a trail cam there, right? It's pitch black in the room, so it's not like they...
Yeah, the lights are off,
Right, so it's not like they knew what to look for or whatever. So, it makes no sense that it was an actual person. But go on.
Well, it gets even more. So even if you were very skeptical and you thought that, and this is where it gets even more interesting. So I got... my then friend, I got her to contact the person who owned the property because we were doing one of those, those were rental things, Airbnb. That's it, the Airbnb thing.
Yeah.
And she showed her that basically it turns out the photograph, to the best of my knowledge, had a resemblance to her cousin who had died in Vietnam at 19, because it was where this figure looks like it's wearing a military uniform, and that was his favourite place to play when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool. Wow. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. Wild. Yeah, so you could even, I mean, you know, so it's either one thing or the other, and normally you go, I think when you're doing analysis, you should go with the most mundane explanation. But there, it becomes, the chain of implausibility to the most mundane explanation almost makes the most mundane explanation very highly implausible. Because what you have then is that whole scenario where somebody would have had to have broken in, not stolen anything, got past two adults and a dog, as you say, got into that room in the dark, switched taken one picture, left, and then got out without us knowing. And then I wouldn't have a resemblance to some family member of the person who owned the property, and this person was also wearing a sort of what looked like to be a military uniform. It's fascinating.
Right, yeah.
You know, you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
You know, and I want to say one last thing about the paranormal thing. There's another story I could tell you. We'll see if we've got time. But I want to say one last thing about this paranormal thing was, you know, I'm quite happy to have things tested and debunked. So in this summer, I was at a wedding. A friend of mine, Phil Collins, he was getting married over in New York State. And we went to a bridge.
Not
where
the singer, right?
No, not him. No, but he did sing a Phil Collins song at his wedding because he gets that.
Oh, of course. You got to.
He did it, yeah. But I was there with a couple of other friends of mine, Mark and Coyote. We went to that, and I know it's a novel before anyone says it, the Headless Horseman Bridge, yeah? We just went there for a laugh. And Coyote's doing this thing. The Headless Horseman Bridge is quite small, actually. It's stunningly small. It's like, but we do this thing where we're just fooling around. And I have a public Facebook page, as you know, as well as my private one. And I said, let's have this thing where, Coyote, you're running across the bridge chasing me, going roar like this, yeah?
Yeah.
So he does this thing where he runs across the bridge and chases me. But there's this really weird, what sounds like a really weird voice, and he goes, ready! When I say, you ready? Yeah? And he goes, ready! So I said, I've got a couple of friends who are involved in paranormal investigations, Krista and Brandy, they call the blonde and the booze. And I said, this voice sounds weird. So can you analyze it? And they did. And it sounded they came back and it says, well, it's not a voice. It's actually an amphibian, you know, or it sounds like amphibian. It's just the way, it sounds more like a frog. Yeah. Or frogs. Yeah. But it's just the way it sounds on your recording. So the reason I make that point is because, when you go into these experiences, and it works for both paranormal and cryptozoology, you have cognitive priming. People want to see a Bigfoot, and often they see a Bigfoot. I've been on many of these things where, when I do most of the research on my own, but if I've been out with a group, sometimes people said, it's a Bigfoot. You know, I see eyes shine. Well, you know what I mean? If Bigfoots are real, then they're extremely rare. Yeah, the chances that every time Bobby Sue goes out, she's going to see a Bigfoot's eye shine just after 100 feet away from a campfire. But that's what she wants to see. So evidence should be tested and corroborated and replicated in order for it to stand any sort of test, whether it's cryptid-related or paranormal-related. And I make a distinction between the two because, for me, generally speaking, they're two different subjects. But I think that West Virginia account is a classic example of something that's very difficult to explain normally. And I think, you know, and I would say, as I said, with the San Diego stuff, I was in that house for a year, and that was the only time I felt like I ever saw something. And I was there 2 or 3 nights a week for a year, you know?
Yeah. Do you, now I don't need this now, but can you send me that picture from the house?
At some point, but I'm not going to put it online yet.
All right. Can you just just send it to me.
I'll send it to you. I'm not going to put it online yet. I'll put it in my next book. That's what I'm going to do with it.
All right. Now, what I was thinking about you today, because we were going to be talking tonight, and one question that kind of crossed my mind. This feels a little bit like almost, since it's been so long since we talked, a little bit almost like a little look back in a way. And when you were first on the show, the first time you were on the program, your whole thing was the orang pendek. That's where you kind of cut your teeth and really made your bones going to Sumatra looking for the orang pendek. But then I take it you have not been back to Sumatra at least since we've talked, which then would make it probably now about 10 plus years since you've. So have you kind of given up the idea of going, you know, have you kind of, I don't want to say given up the search. You're a young guy. You in the next couple of years, you could be going back to Sumatra in 2025 or whatever, you know what I mean? But certainly seem to have paused this sort of idea that you were just going to keep going to Sumatra until you found the thing, which is probably for the best in general. I mean, I think that's the smartest thing for anyone to do. I think if you had gone to Sumatra every year, I think you would have lost your mind a little bit, and we would have been like, so what happened this time, Adam? And you'd be like, oh, you know, this, you know. It's
I don't want to be like that. No, I didn't want to be like that.
Right.
So I'll answer your question.
Well, I guess talk a little bit. That's kind of talk a little bit about sort of that transition, if you will, from sort of focusing on the orang. And have you been following it? Are they getting any closer, despite the fact that they don't have your genius at work to help the efforts?
Well, all my time, the predominance of my time researching has been Bigfoot or feral people related. And I want to talk about feral people later on because I think that's interesting.
Ooh, interesting.
So we'll talk about that. But I never wanted to get very obsessed with one particular cryptid. I mean, your listeners might know. For example, I look for the Makile Mbembe in the Congo, the Mandibarung in India, Yeren in China, lots of different things. The orang pendek was always my favourite, and you're right, I went to Sumatra 8 times. But I don't think it's healthy to just bang on and on and on about the same thing and do that. Because it's always very difficult to get evidence for these things. The orang pendek is very rare. It's in an area that is under threat, and I wanted to find it, but I didn't want it to become an obsession. Right. And so I never wanted to do that
to a lot of people.
Yeah, it does, and some people who, you know, I think some people get very unhappy if they don't find that evidence because they're highly competent sometimes. For example, René de Hinden was a very assiduous and detailed researcher, and he didn't get that evidence. And, you know, I think that hurt him. Whereas you've got someone like Bob Gimlin, who was just lucky that day, you know, when he sees the Patterson Gimlin thing, he's just lucky. Now, Bob's lovely. I think he's a great guy, but René de Hinden was an accomplished, detailed researcher. Bob's a lucky guy. He just happened to be there. He'd say that himself. He's lucky. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And it was Roger Patterson's idea. And that is often what can happen, you know. I go out all the time. I live in Tennessee now, and I go out all the time researching. I climb mountains. I go through all sorts of things, you know, all the time I'm out. But what's more likely, the most likely way evidence of Bigfoot will be found is if someone just bumps it on some like deer hunters knocks it down as he's driving home one day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He probably doesn't give a shit about Bigfoot or anything else, yeah? But so I just think that's just the way things roll sometimes. So I didn't want to do that.
Exactly.
But the last time we spoke, I was living in San Diego, and what I did, I spent quite a bit of time going out with some of the Native American people there. I was in... there's a guy called Marcel Cagney, and we went out doing some research around the areas. I also spent some time doing some projects on the border with Mexico. There were some very unsavory characters I met. The border of Mexico can be a bit dodgy.
Yeah, that sounds hairy already.
Yeah. But I had my wits about me. But I had a trail camp.
And you're a British guy, so you stick out like even more like a sore thumb. You're like, wait a minute, what's this British guy doing running around here on the American-Mexican border? How did you get here, guy?
Well, it wasn't so much the Border Patrol. It was more the other figures that you might meet occasionally, you know.
I can imagine, yeah.
I remember there was one guy wandering around, and I remember he had a really big head, and he had a stick with a club on the end, and he was wandering around in the scrub. I don't know what he was looking for, but me and him met, and we just nodded, and I was like, I'm getting ready for this guy, but he was far more interested in whatever he was looking for in the dirt, but he looked like something from Breaking Bad. You know what I mean? He was like,
oh man,
like, oh my god. So I did that for quite a while. But before I left, I think the coolest story there from California that I can think of when I focused my mind was I'd worked very hard to get permission to go into this tribal area. So there's the Thule tribe, which is in central California, and they were great with me, but it took about a year to get permission to go to their special tribal area, which is high in the mountains. They're the ones with the Bigfoot cave painting thing, you know, rock painting thing.
Yeah.
And I think I was the first person who wasn't from their tribe to go up to this area. I don't know if there are anything else, but it's 3 hours up from the mountains.
Oh, wow.
In the mountains, they have their own little cabins, and my friend Craig and his wife, I went up there with them and a couple of other people, and this was a purported Bigfoot area for generations. So I was really privileged to get permission, and we stayed in these little cabins, and it kicked off at night. It went mad. So I'm in one cabin, and Craig and his wife are in the other cabin. I was with somebody else in the other cabin, and there were things, and I can't say. I've got to be careful because I didn't see them, so I can't say what it was. But it's like, this is in the mountains. It's very remote. 3 hours uphill from the tribe, in their own area, and things were throwing stuff at our cabins all night long, for hours and hours and hours. And when we come out, they would stop, and then we go back in, and then they throw it, yeah? And these were not substantial. Jesus. These were little huts, yeah? It felt...
Did you see the stuff on the ground that they were throwing at?
Yeah, well, I saw the branches. They were branches and things like that they were throwing.
Okay, yeah.
And it was boom, boom, boom all night, both the cabins, for hours. When it went to daylight, there was nothing. And I really wanted to go back there just before I left San Diego to go to Ohio. I really wanted to go back there. But unfortunately, my friend Craig got bitten by a rattlesnake.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's loads of snakes there. He nearly died, but he survived and he's cool. But I was really keen to go there just before I left for Ohio. And I did not, which is unfortunate because that was great. It was a really interesting piece of research.
Weird. Did you ever look? Why didn't you look out the window when the house? Well,
we did, but the things would stop.
See anything?
All right. You jump out, and the things would. It's a good question.
No, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to put myself in that situation. I'd be looking out the window, going like, "What the fuck's throwing?"
Well, you look out the window, but you can't see anything. It's pitch black, and all you can hear is things landing on the the roof.
That makes sense.
When you come outside, it stops, and you can't see whatever's doing it. Yeah, many times I had a look, but never really got a clear look. You know?
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
So to circle back, you're my only source for what might be happening. So are they any closer to finding?
Oh, the Orangutan. Sorry.
Even when I was talking to you about
I didn't answer the question.
Well, just because my own curiosity. Cause it's like when we used to talk about it, it was like it seemed like they were really close, but they still haven't gotten it yet. It's like
they haven't gotten it yet. There are sightings with sporadic regularity, but no, they haven't got it yet. I mean, it's very elusive. I mean, it's retreating farther. I would imagine it's retreating. And this is me speculating because I don't know. It's retreating farther and farther into that jungle. There's still enough jungle just about so they can do that. But it's a roaming creature. So, I mean, the most common sightings of the orang pendek, when I used to look for it, was that it was on the edge of farms. So what do I mean by farms? Okay, so I get married, I marry somebody called, let's call her Crystal. I marry Crystal, yeah. You marry Genevieve, yeah. And we're brothers, yeah.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
okay. So you're married to Genevieve, I'm married to Crystal. And where do we get our, the eldest son might get the land, okay? Say I'm the eldest son, where do you and Genevieve get your land from? You cut down a bit of the forest, yeah? Now you've got a farm. And it's very fertile land. It's all volcanic in Sumatra. So it's real fertile. So that's what happens. Now, the question then becomes that rainforest gets more and more eroded. So where you were seeing orang pendek was often on the edge of that farmland, eating things like sugarcane.
Yeah.
And rainforest gets pulled down all the time for things like palm oil plantations, which is a very poor ecological system, a palm oil plantation. Not many things can survive there. So I still hope there is things with the orang pendek, but and I still think that I will do more travelling. But other than Canada, I've mostly spent my time in the United States. Over the last I don't know, whatever years.
Well, there's plenty to look for here. So
yeah, I mean, I've travelled all over the place. I must have travelled to many, many states now, at least over half of them, looking for evidence of Bigfoot. So I've done a lot of travelling to different places. And tonight, we're just looking at a few stories I've done. As I say, a lot of the time I'm standing on top of a mountain, nothing happens. I'm standing in a swamp, nothing happens. I'm in the desert in California, nothing happens. All these different systems, nothing happens. But we're just getting a few of the things that have really struck me over the last few years.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you moved from California to Ohio, you said?
Yeah, I spent years in Ohio. I also went a lot in the desert. I went a lot in the desert and had a look around there in California. I enjoyed the desert. It has a stark beauty.
Yeah.
But I was glad to get back to woods. I was only 6 months in Ohio before I moved to Tennessee. And I moved to Tennessee in almost a year exactly, almost to the day. Yeah.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk to you a little bit.
Whereabouts in Tennessee are you?
I don't want to say exactly, but not far away from the airport. Knoxville.
Okay, I was just in Nashville last weekend, so I didn't.
Oh, right, okay. No, I know you were. You were at that conference. I saw you on Facebook at that conference.
Yeah. I visited the Bell Witch Cave. You been out there at all?
No, I haven't. I should go.
Oh, you should check it out. It's fun.
Yeah, I'll be very interested. But where I am is only about 45 minutes from the Great Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
And I can be from my door to the Smokies in 45 minutes. And then within an hour, I can be off trail.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And I can do I've been doing lots and lots of research in that area. And I wanted to come on to feral people, but I want to tell you, if I may, one other story before we move on to Tennessee, which I think is very interesting, which I want to tell you about. Or am I jumping around too much? Am I caught?
No, you're fine. I don't give a fuck.
Okay. Well, that's it.
What show do you think you're on, Adam? This is fucking Binnall in America. We do whatever we want.
Well, I like the anarchic vibe to your show. Some people are like, well, go from this to this to this in a linear way. And I'm like, no, shit, I want to tell him this. This just pops into my head. Don't let me forget the feral people thing, because that's the one thing
I can already tell you, half the people listening are like, get to the fucking portal already, man. Get to the portal already. We're going to get to the portal.
We'll do that at the end. Let's just do this. Let's just do this. How about this? We'll do this. We'll do this. And then the feral people, and then we'll talk about a pool. Okay.
There you go.
So let's.
I know personally. I can hear them. You don't understand. I can hear them. Like, listen, everyone's like, I want to hear about the feral people. But anyway, let's.
Well, the reason I want to tell you this story is because I've only heard. I spent some time on Vancouver Island with Thomas Stewart, and that was one of the only places. I've only heard 3 very cool Bigfoot-related howls, or possible Bigfoot-related. I say possible, didn't see it, but I thought they were of interest. I'm finding something. That's why I'm playing on my phone.
All right,
for you, so you can have a little listen. But one of them was in Alabama, where one of them was in Washington State, and one of them was in Vancouver Island. Here's the one I played.
Three different expeditions.
Yeah, here's one from Alabama. You just hear some dogs and things howling in the background, and then you hear a howl.
Oh, wow. Oh, jeez. See, that would scare the shit out of me.
Then and at that point, you're in the middle of the woods. What do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, but let me tell you, I just thought that was an interesting tangential thing. So, I went to Port. So I'm in the bar in Vancouver Island. It was before, and I was talking to Stephen Major, this guy there, and we were about to go on this trip to Vancouver Island. I didn't meet him by accident in the bar. So
right.
You know, we're having a drink chat, and he says, I'd really like to do this thing looking for the hairy man. I'd really like to do that. I've always wanted to do that. I've always been interested. And I was like, okay, I'm interested too. And he said, if you go, I'll kind of pay you to make sure I'm come back in one piece and everything.
Yeah.
It's always been a dream of mine. My wife's worried, and I was like, well, yeah, let's. He said, but there's stories about this creature there that goes out and kills people, and in the 1950s, the whole town was abandoned because these things killed people.
This is like Western Canada?
No, it's Alaska. Point Chatham.
Oh, okay.
It's in Alaska. You can look it up. And I thought, well, this sounds great, man. And not only is this dude paying me to keep him alive, but I'm also going to go and like lodge it looking for a monster that's killed people. And
right. Yeah.
Now,
there's actually a chance he may not come back alive.
Yeah. Well, bollocks! I'm going anyway. Do you know what I mean? You know what?
Yeah. If they're not good, then they're going to take you and him out. So it's like, hey, I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what good you think I would do in the face of a monstrous creature like that. But all right, let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So, there is a lot of research that, if you look at this story, people will. So the story is, as I say, in the 1950s, this town was a prosperous fishing town called Port Chatham, and something called the Hairy Man started to kill people, so they evacuated it and all left in terror. Yeah. Now, since that, there's other contrary articles which say actually this is an urban myth. It's made up. One individual spread this story, and that's what happened. So again, I think you should consider what's the more likely to be the more plausible story. Has this been a rollback of civilization by a big creature that went around killing people, or is it more likely that the industry there, which was the fishing industry, suffered a decline and they left? Well, clearly, the fishing industry suffered a decline and they left is the more likely scenario.
Right.
And I accept that. But whatever is the truth behind that, the people there in the locality believed that it was a badass place. Yeah? Right. They were like the Native Americans who owned land. I think one of them sent a mail to Stephen saying, "Don't go, it's one of the most evil places on earth."
Oh, God.
The locals, when we were going there, the first time we were going, me, Stephen, and this guy called Josiah, they were like, Stephen could only get one boatman to take us out there, yeah? And he was like $1,000 in and $1,000 out just to drop us off on the damn beach, yeah? And he was like that captain out of Jaws. He was going, and we're going to be going around the clashing rocks, and it's like, I was like, oh, well, going crazy ass captain. He was the only one, and when we got back after we survived, people like were shaking our hands, saying, "Oh my goodness, you're alive! You're alive!" We stopped at a Native American village on the way, and they just didn't want to talk to us because we were going there. You know, it was like we were cursed. It was like something out of a Stephen King novel. You know, I thought this would make a great novel, and in fact, I wrote one. I got long COVID, and I was like quite fuzzy. I was quite fuzzy-headed, and so I wasn't well for a while. So I wrote my first novel, Revenge of the Hairy Man, just imagining what would have happened if the scenario was real and if these creatures really had killed people and sent it out. So I wrote a story behind it, but I just thought it was such a cool story. I thought it was really interesting. There's loads more I could say, but I just want to condense what I'm saying tonight. But that was something I thought was really a very, very interesting story. And afterwards, I went out with, I think a year or two later, Stephen and I and a guy called Larry Beansback, so we went to the Arctic Circle. We travelled that vast area all the way up to the Arctic Circle in Alaska. From Fairbanks, we went on that. We went all the way up, and I swam in the Arctic Sea when I got to the top.
Jesus.
So there we are.
You are an adventurer. But when you went to this town where the Bigfoots or whatever ran all the people out, you didn't find any. Like what?
No, it was abandoned. It was abandoned.
It
was abandoned. It has an eerie vibe to it. I mean, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
And there was one time when I was pulling my shotgun up, and I saw something looked like it was shimmering in the bushes, and I pulled the shotgun up. I was so concerned about it, but I didn't get a clear look at what it was. That's a whole bigger story, but didn't find anything. It was just a cool story. And
no, for sure.
Alaska is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So there we are. All right, so feral people, and then I promise you we'll do this. We'll do this portal thing. The reason I wanted to talk about feral people was because the area of Tennessee where I do a lot of research, obviously what I'm doing essentially is looking for evidence of Bigfoot, physical evidence of Bigfoot. I don't think it's a paranormal entity. I think it leaves footprints. I think it consumes food. I think it's a real creature. And it's
okay, you think it's a flesh and blood creature.
I think it's a flesh and blood creature. I think it may well have unique qualities, which I don't understand, but I don't think it's a ghost or anything. You know what I mean? I think the two are different. I'm interested in both.
So you don't subscribe to the paranormal possibilities of Bigfoot, which a lot of people do.
Well, I don't know what qualities Bigfoot would have. The qualities I don't subscribe. I can tell you what I don't think. I don't subscribe to this notion that Bigfoot is a wonderful, benevolent creature that just wants to save humanity. And the only people who can hear it or speak to it are those with a pure heart. Yeah?
God, I don't know. Yeah, that's a real far out.
Yeah, well, that would be you. That would be you and I fuck for a start. But it's, I mean, it's just bullshit. That there's no animal or, I mean, that notion is incredible. The idea that if you look at people, there are good people, there are bad people, there are dickheads.
Yeah.
You know, if you
that
look
ascribes
at animals,
a sentience to Bigfoot that I don't necessarily subscribe to. Like Bigfoot, some higher intelligence, like better than people, even. Yeah, it's like that.
Well, a higher hippie creature that just wants.
Yeah. That to me, I mean, like all right, that's a stretch.
Yeah, people have different personalities. So do animals have different personalities.
Exactly.
You know, your cat can be nice one day, or it can be a dick the next day. You know, I mean, it's just
right.
The idea that Bigfoot's just. I don't subscribe to that. But other than that, I don't know. We have no specimens of Bigfoot. I think there's too much dealing in certainties in this place. You know, I mean, I think it's cool to say I don't know, and I don't know is an important thing to say. Absolutely. In a lot of these. So I don't know. I know, but I want to try and gather evidence. So I'm looking to try and get hair samples with hair traps. I'm looking to set trail cameras up and do things like that. And I spend a lot of time out in nature, and people in my Adam Davies Facebook page will see me take lots of photographs of the wilderness and photographs out there. But I'm out looking for nature and doing that. And I love it. But I got very interested in the feral people stories. So near there, near where I am, was the Dennis Martin story at Spence Field. Now, Dennis Martin disappeared. I'm looking at my note here. I think it's June 1969 is when he disappeared. Now, it's a very interesting story. So he's 6 years
I've never
old.
heard this story. Okay,
Oh,
tell
look
us
it
the
up.
story.
It's famous. It's famous. So him and his family are up in this place called Spencefield, this high-level pasture, and they're picking blueberries. It's a heck of a long way to go for blueberries. I'll tell you about that later. But they're doing that, and 6-year-old Dennis Martin disappears behind a bush. He's never found again. His family look for him everywhere. There's a search. There's and even the Green Berets are involved.
Oh, wow.
There's dogs, thousands of people. No trace of him is ever found. But his father thinks, so there's different possibilities. Did he wander away and die of exposure? Was he killed by a bear? And there are a lot of bears in my part of Tennessee. A lot, yeah? Or did some sort of feral person take him? And his father believed the latter. But it's a famous story. Now, the first time I went up to Spencefield, I was fine. I'm there, and I climb and do a lot of trekking and all that lot.
Yeah.
The second time I went to Spencefield, but the first time I went, it's a creepy-ass place, Tim. Of all the places I've hiked, first of all, it's an effort to get there. I should say that. So if you go from Cades Cove, the car park area at Cades Cove, up to Spencefield and back, you're talking 13 miles, and you're climbing a lot of that first section. Yeah, so it's a hard track. It's a hard track.
That sounds tough. Yeah,
but the first time. Well, the first time, not at a moment, you wouldn't anyway.
No, not right now.
But the first time I did it, I was fine. The second time I do it, and I'm with somebody who's a nurse who's with me. As we're getting up there, we both collapse. Yeah.
Oh Jesus!
It's so weird. Both collapse. I passed out, and eventually made it up there through determination. Yeah. But only like this is very recently. This happened this year. It's only 6 or 7 weeks later. A couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, I climbed Mount LeConte for a charity climb, which is harder. So I cannot explain to you why I suddenly passed out, but I felt exhausted. And the other person with me, who also does a lot of fitness, also passed out at the same time as I'm climbing up there. It's a very weird thing. And it's a very unpleasant, it made me feel uncomfortable when I got up there.
Yeah.
No.
So
let me just say this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So 30 miles away from there, and this is a weirder story still, but it's less talked about, but some of your listeners will know it. It's the 23rd of August, 2008. Mike Heron, and this is only about 40 minutes away from where I live, maybe less than that. He's a successful businessman. He owns a farm, and he also owns, he lives in Maryville. So this is 2008. This is relatively recently.
Yeah, it's like 15 years ago.
Yeah. He's 51. He's doing well for himself. He hasn't got any relationship issues. He disappears. This time they find his car in high gear, and they find his ATV in high gear. Thousands of people involved in the search, including cadaver dogs, so dogs that look for dead bodies. Not a trace of him is found.
Jesus.
There's a cave system around this area, and I've done a little bit of research and I found a couple of strange things. But we'll leave that hanging in the air for now.
Oh no! Well, tell me about the feral people, though, because
there's speculation that there might be feral people in the area. Well, there has been.
So, who are these feral people?
We don't know.
Where do they come from? How long have they? Well, tell me what you think. I've never heard of this before.
Well, the speculation that people may have retreated. For example, Cades Cove there was a lot of compulsory land purchases. That was a national park. It wasn't a national park. It was where people lived.
Yeah.
It's a very vibrant ecosystem. The winters are mild here. I mean, there's enough to survive on.
Yeah.
Could people be living out in the woods? Yeah. Or could these people just have had terrible luck? Or could it be something else, another creature that's taken them? But that's what I'm investigating at the moment. I haven't come to a conclusion. But that's what I'm looking at right now, as well as the Bigfoot research. And I think the Mike Heron case is even more fascinating. I mean, they're tragic. Let's just say that. I want to be respectful and say they're tragic. You have loved people who were dearly loved, a child and a father who were dearly loved by his family. So I think that's the most important point. But after that, it's a real mystery as to what happened here. And I want to see if I can get any more out of this. So that's what I'm working on right now, as well as the Bigfoot. I'm always working on the Bigfoot.
How widespread is the belief that they're feral? How widespread is that feral people idea? Is this
I don't know. I don't know
down there.
I mean, it's. I mean, people would say it's more plausible than a Bigfoot. You know?
Right. But I mean, how much is that like just something people believe down there? I guess what I'm trying to say. Like, is it?
No, the locals. No, I don't think that. Yeah. I don't think most of them would know about this subject or would discuss it. I think you'd have to go on about it. I think Mike Heron was a very well discussed subject at the time, but that was then and this is now. And I was speaking to somebody who was buying a house off one of the policemen who was involved in the search for Heron, and he said, she said rather that his garage was just covered with maps of the whole area because it frustrated the police so much that they couldn't find any evidence of this dude at all,
Yeah, well, I don't know what to make of it. It's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of disappearances in the wilderness that aren't, aren't unusual, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like, turns out it's actually fairly prosaic, where it's like they fell and they're in a remote area and they just don't get found, and then their body gets scavenged, and
that would
they
be
don't
the case,
find them after a few years.
But with the circumstances of this, do you want to come up? I'll swap with you. Yeah, come on. I'll swap with you. You come up. Don't worry. She's just getting ready to. She's getting ready to go to work because she's up at 5.
Oh damn.
So, I think with that, the thing that interests me about Heron, as I say, is his vehicle was in high gear, and so was his ATV. It almost felt like he saw something, was looking at something, and something took him. His wallet was left in his car, yeah?
Right.
And all his personal possessions. There was no reason for him to suddenly disappear, and then boom, he's gone. His family suspect foul play, but there's never been an answer to it. And that's very interesting. There's a cave system there as well in that area too. There's plenty to look at as well as the Bigfoot.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings us back almost to, we talked about the Yuba County 5 on the show back when we relaunched Binnall America. It sounds like this case you're talking about here has the same element of an unseen compelling force compelled this guy to leave the scene. We don't know what, but some kind of unseen force drove him out of the area, which is interesting.
It's like, what was it?
Phenomenon.
What was it?
Right. Yeah.
And I just find that super interesting. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Bigfoot, and I'm looking at the feral people, and there's quite a few cool things coming up early next year. Not necessarily connected to them, but they're coming up. But you want to ask me about the portal thing? And your listeners, I've probably been waiting about an hour. So what do you want to ask me?
Exactly. Well, how much? Well, I mean, come on, dude. There's so much to ask. But since we talked about it back, how long ago was that? I forget now. It was like probably about 8 years ago or something like that was when it all went down, I believe. Have your thoughts on what you experienced changed or evolved, or have you thought about? Obviously, you thought about it more, but what's your takeaway on that? Because I mean, you've shared a lot of fascinating stories tonight, but this one experience has become iconic in a lot of ways. It really is.
And in a way,
I hate to be that guy, but like, they say, like when they write your obituary, like Adam Davies of Portal Story fame.
You see, and that's just not what I want. You see,
I know.
It's not what I want. I mean, I sort of look at it, and it frustrates me because I never wanted that story to come out in the first place. You know that,
right?
You know
I remember. Yeah.
But I think of all the things I've done, like crossing the Congo, the Kula Swamp, which was hell on earth, and people said, "Oh, this couldn't be done," or climbing mountains in Nepal, or whatever else. All these, crossing that part of India, all these things I've done, and then a few days in Oregon is like the thing that people want to talk to me about most. And
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
I know, but I'll just say in their defense, Adam,
yeah.
Everybody listening to this, and you and I and all of us, we're all chasing that unknown.
Yeah,
I
get that.
You got the glimpse of God, man. You got the glimpse of like whatever the fuck this is. So
yeah, and I had a very clear look for a few nights. I saw these things very clearly. What I did was this: I wrote and I'm not trying to sell this book. It's not a bestseller, but I wrote a book called Portals and Monsters, which is a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And in that Portals and Monsters, it's my favourite novel that I've written so far. I sort of let my, when I talk about the actual experience I had, I'm very important to stick to the facts of what I saw and what I observed at the time. But in the novel, I sort of let my mind go and imagine what these things could be, where they're from, and what their motivations are. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm answering your question. Is
Absolutely.
Because it was a cathartic experience to be able to do that. I mean, the whole experience of what happened was completely horrific. To this day, it's the most horrific thing that's ever happened to me, and I have been shot at. But it's the most horrific thing that's ever happened to me by a long way, and it's got easier to talk about over the years.
Yeah,
I do talk about it with John from time to time. I've never done a presentation on it or spoke about it publicly. The only time I ever spoke about it in an interview was that one time to you. And since then, I have never done it anywhere else. And, I'll say to people, before we start, I'm not going to be talking about that portal thing because it's painful to bring up. And that's why I wanted to...
I'm sorry, I didn't...
No, I don't mind. I expected you to talk about it. And I want, and that
we're weirdly bonded by this thing, in a way.
No,
so
I expected you. I expected you to. That was part of this interview. So but my point is, I've never talked about it in public. I might do in the future. It's got easy to talk about, so it might be something that I talk about. So in answer to your question, I'm giving a long roundabout answer to your question. So my thoughts is, I thought about where they're from, what their motivation is. I've talked to John Carlson about it. And we have different opinions about what they might be. And that's good. I think John Carlson is a great guy and I respect him a lot. He would say, I think that those things are interdimensional entities. I think that they are, I'm giving my opinion. I can't say it's fact.
Yeah.
I think the things that we encountered are interdimensional entities. They showed to me, demonstrated a level of technology which was fallible because we were able to defeat it, and they showed emotion in our case, very dark emotion, anger and hatred, but there was technology there. John would say they're demons. That's because he's very religious, and I respect that, but I don't agree with him. I think that they are. I saw that world that they came from. It looked to me physical. I saw a tree, if you recall. It was gnarled. That it looked to me like they were coming from some very unpleasant but physical place. And with technology. And that's my rationale. Again, it goes back to the point I said earlier on, I don't know, and I probably will never know. I saw those creatures very clearly for many, many hours intermittently overnight. And, just to recap, nobody was drinking or taking drugs or anything else like that. They were unmistakable. And it wasn't just one night; it was several nights. I know people will forever, and I never wanted that story to come out.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just one night.
No, it was a couple of nights we saw them over.
Okay.
If you go back to your interview, you'll hear us say that.
All right, I have to check that.
Yeah. So because we saw them one night, and then it was the second night.
Now I'm kind of.
Do you remember? Yeah. So we saw them very clearly. I mean, and one of the reasons stayed in the place for. I mean, we were there several days and nights, but those things appeared the last few nights. And one of the reasons that stayed the final night, because we were due to leave that day anyway, was because it was so incredible, so difficult to process. I wanted to repeat the experiment and see if the same thing happened on that final night, and it did. You know, so
When you look back on that experience, now you've had all this time to think about it. Do you have any? I wouldn't necessarily call them regrets, but are there things you wish you had done differently? In retrospect,
in relation to that thing, no, I'm glad we survived it.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know if you. Yeah. Did you try to communicate with these things? You shout at them or anything?
Well, John shouted at them the first night that they popped out, and that did not provoke a good response. That's when they came down the stretch trying to attack us.
Yeah.
And he shouted at them because it was anger and horror, I think, at what they were. Because I'd said, I'm not going to go to bed if those things are around. And he said, well, what are you going to do? He shouted at them, what are you going to do if we don't go to bed? And that was when they launched themselves at us and went for us. And that was the worst moment. No, I think after that, I think we were pretty cool-headed. Dealing with that situation. We had a lot of time talking about it to one another, trying to process it all. And it's very difficult. And I don't mind taking a stick. I'm in the public eye. I make films. I made that Yeti Massacre film for Discovery recently, if anybody's seen that. So I'm on TV, we go to talks, and people sometimes will give you stick. But sometimes it's hard to take stick about an incident that's so horrific to you. Yeah. It's so, which caused you so much suffering, and then someone's trying to make a joke about it. That's hard to take.
Right, yeah.
And it's hard for John to take. So we talked about that quite a lot. And the other side of the coin is people will turn around to me and say, well, you're incredibly blessed to have seen those things. I don't feel like I'm fucking blessed at all. It was a nightmare. Yeah?
Right.
I'd be blessed if I saw Bigfoot. I've always wanted to see that fucker. I'd be blessed if I saw the orang pendek. I felt like I was blessed when I did see the Seljord serpent in Norway. But those things, that was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't feel blessed about it. I really don't.
How would you... from what I remember, these were like almost Ewok-like creatures in a way, or sort of like diminutive...
they were small and stocky and black. Yeah, and they had little like pinhole red eyes. But it wasn't that. It was when John shouted that thing. It's this single moment, which is the worst thing for me. Is when John shouted that, and they came down to the path towards us, and they moved in this like raggedy orange glow. But it was the thing opened its mouth, and it had such hate on it. It was contorted. This one that was coming towards me, and I was getting ready to fight it, and I was thinking, I'm going to die here, and no one's going to know how I died. And all the other things I've done, I've taken a lot of life risks. There's always been a chance that I would have died before now. All the things I've done, Tim. But I think it was like the fact that these things were going to do that. That was the thing that really disturbed me more than anything else. And I can't tell you why, but that was the worst moment.
Well, yeah, that would certainly... Thinking you were going to die, it certainly would be...
It's not the thinking I was going to die. It's not the thinking I was going to die. It was the fact that no one would know how I died.
I see. Yeah.
Not dying. There's been many a time when I thought I might die. It was the how I was going to go. That was the thing.
See, you're very different from me. I think I think that would probably be the one thing I'd be happy about. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to leave behind a fucking wild mystery. They're not going to know what happened to Binnall. They're going to be like, what the fuck happened to Binnall? He just vanished or whatever. He was eaten by some unknown predator or whatever. Something wild. So, I don't know if you know Steve Berg. He may have reached out to you. He's a paranormal podcast. He's also an actor.
No,
started
I
out
don't
as
know.
an actor. He's a huge fan. He's obsessed with this. He had a couple of questions about this, so I told him, since it's the Christmas, since we're coming out for Christmas, I'll figure give him a little gift. He's responsible, really, for Binnall America coming back, so he's the one
Okay,
that
fair
really
enough.
encouraged me. He wants to know, how did this affect you and your reality? Did this change the way you look at reality after?
I think that's a super, super good question. And it did have a profound effect on me because I was always quite linear and quite scientific in my approaches, even though I look for unknown creatures. I considered myself reasonably well educated. I had a degree and a postgrad as well, And I thought, well, actually, I know nothing. These things exist, and I know really nothing about how the world works, how these things work, or anything else. Yeah. So it had a profound effect on my worldview because I thought, well, if these things can exist, and they do exist, they observed them very clearly. So did John for hours and hours intermittently over several nights. They exist. So what the fuck is going on here? We really know very little. We really are scratching the surface. I mean, it's a common analogy, but we often talk about whether creatures. I don't think these were that technologically that far advanced than us. More so, but not super. But if I put the most intelligent, it's an analogy that I've heard before, but I'm going to play here. If I put the most intelligent ant in front of this laptop, it could be the brightest ant in the world, but it wouldn't be able to work it. So what I mean by that is, it's as a human, it's very humbling to know that there are so much in the world that I really don't know or understand, and that's just it.
Yeah.
What's his other question?
His other question, and this is I think you kind of almost answered this in a way, but he wants to know if you had any other paranormal high strange activity after the portal event. But I guess we know that you have because you've talked about these incidents afterwards. So I guess what I want to know, to piggyback off of that, is do you think that this experience might have activated you? Let's say, let's use that as the
activated me. What do you mean? As in made me paranormally more heightened?
Yeah, maybe flip something. Maybe sort of opened you up to the other side, if you will.
Yeah,
it seems since then you've had a lot of experience. That was really the most. I mean, Adam, I talked to you over the years. I know because it started out where you were like a mild-mannered British clerk who was going on these trips to fucking look for the orang pendek, and then you came to America. The Bigfoot thing happened, the picture. Then the next time out, the portal happened, and now it's just like, foosh.
Oh yeah, and I haven't told. We haven't got time tonight to go through all the other stories, but but yes, very possibly, Tim, because it wasn't something I really looked into within any depth before that happened to me. In fact, I did nothing on it in England. I did, England with all its history. I did no paranormal stuff whatsoever. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know.
So it's just interesting, like you were saying the story about going to the Native American area and you're in the thing and the things are pelting the cabin. It was like I was getting portal flashbacks there. Mm-hmm. It's like, how the fuck do you know you're not dealing with the same force that you were that night in Oregon or whatever?
Well, I don't think it was the same. I don't feel the same. It was a certain oppression I felt with the things in Oregon, and I've never seen them, or I should say I've never seen them or felt them anywhere else ever. And I've been in some very remote areas, so I can't say that I ever did again. But Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's other things that I'll tell you another time when we next chat, because, and the reason I'm keeping them back a little bit is because they haven't, the story is not finished yet. But to go to your question, I'll take your opinion on that in that way, you know?
It certainly seems that way, but and you know, when I ask about having regrets, it's not necessarily like that. I guess I mean almost like, well, I wish I had thrown a rock at these things. Maybe you did. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's like, well, maybe I should have offered them food or whatever. See if they ate something, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I don't think I would have done anything differently there. You know, I think it was a question of survival. I felt like we were in a battle, and if you like, those flashlights we had were like our weapon, because that was what was shutting down their technology. I felt like I was in a battle. Yeah.
And how's John handling all this still? Is he kind of coming to grips with what you guys experienced?
I think he he's good with it now. I think when I say good with it, when it first happened, it was extremely unpleasant, and we talked to one another on Skype at the time, just to sort of make ourselves feel better, because it was an impossible thing. It was really difficult, and people really struggled with it. I mean, I remember talking about it in the pub one night with my friends who I'd been friendly with for years, you know, and a lot of them are just not remotely interested in this subject at all, you know, cryptozoology or anything like that. They're people I've grown up with. So it's always a good balance to have that, because, you know, but I told them the story, and there was just absolute dead silence in the pub. Absolute, you could hear a pin drop. And then one of them started talking about football. You know, it was just too much. It was just too much. It wasn't that they didn't believe me. They knew me. They did believe me. It was just too much for people to process. So it felt very weird. And so it's a comfort, I think, to me, and I think probably if John were here, he would say vice versa, to have had one another to share that experience. You know, and be able to, if there's one positive, it's the fact that we had that shared experience, horrific though it was, and we're able to process it by talking to one another about it.
Yeah, that's true. If it had just been you or just him, then it would have been kind of...
It would have been much worse. Much worse. But then, you know, that it would have been much worse. I'm glad he was there, although I didn't want him to suffer, and I'm sure he'd say the same if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I feel bad now because you sound like, I mean, I remember you saying how difficult it was, but it sounds even now, years later, it sounds like it was even more traumatic in a way than even, because when we talked originally, I think he was still kind of full of piss and vinegar from the experience in a way.
Well, I was more intense. I was more intense about it.
Yeah,
But now I'm more reflective on it.
Right.
So I'm standing a little bit back from it. It's not painful to talk to you about it now, but I wouldn't spend a whole evening chatting away to a group of happy campers about it, you know.
Right, exactly.
As I say, I do presentations, and I've done a lot of talks on my expeditions in different parts of the country, but I've never talked about it on a presentation. And this is the only interview I've ever done, and I've come back to it on your interview, and that's it. It's not something I commonly talk about.
Right, exactly. So I think, well, we'll move on, I guess, because there's really nothing, and I'm going to get you out of here like in 10 minutes or so, because I'm pretty wiped out, and I know you.
Yeah, I can tell you wiped out, and I've got to get up early.
Yeah. So what is? So I've seen pictures lately of you traveling around to various areas. So what the hell have you been up to? You said you made a movie or something?
One of the things I did that's just come out. There's a couple of things that I'm doing right now. Yeti Massacre is on Discovery right now. I was a part of that, and that deals with the Dyatlov Pass incident in 1959. Okay. And I was a part of that show. But if anyone wants to watch that, they can just Google Yeti massacre on Discovery, and it's an interesting story. It's got some new evidence to it, which I thought made it worth. I'm glad I was a part of it because of the new evidence that they brought to the table. Any of these TV shows dramatize things. It's a horrific story. I don't want to ruin it in case any of you people don't know.
Right.
By the time your interview airs, my new novel will come out, and that's called Monsters in Maryville, and that will be out. That will be out by the time that this interview airs at Christmas. So that'll be out, and I'm also researching the Bigfoot and the feral people around Tennessee. Tennessee is very beautiful, and I like researching in the area. I love it, and I've got a few big things to do in January, February, and March. So they're already coming up. So there's a few things I'm excited about coming up, but I can't really talk about them yet because I don't want to ruin them. But there's one very cool story coming up in February, which I will enjoy telling you about after I've done it. You'll be like, "Oh shit!" Put it like that.
Now, So you mentioned novels and everything. So what made you sort of transition to writing novels, and how many have you written now? And I guess talk a little bit about that because you only kind of casually mentioned it, but this is sort of a pivot in a way from what we had talked about in the past. This is a new. I mean, you may have been doing it for a while, but it's been a while since we talked. So it's like, okay, now you write novels. So
it's fair enough. I wrote 3 expedition books, Extreme Expeditions 1, 2, and 3, which detail my life, if you like. But in order to create one of those books, because I don't write about other people's experiences, not because I'm not interested in them. I wanted to create diaries at the time of my adventures, because I was told if you don't write them, they'll be lost, and they'll be lost in the sands of time. And you should write them. I think Lauren was the first person who told me to do that, and I'm glad that happened because. So I did create those stories and detail those, and I'm really glad I did, especially as I've got a history degree. So, but in order to create enough material for me to be satisfied, remember most of the time, as I have said during this interview, nothing happens. It can take years for one of those books to happen. Now, the next book of that ilk will be in 18 months' time. It'll be 18 months before I feel like I've got enough material to publish a new book. So, as I mentioned, I got long COVID, and that's why I wrote Revenge of the Hairy Man. Because I was recovering, and I had a real fuzzy-headedness, and I was recovering. And I thought that actually helped me, on a cerebral level, to write that book. And so that's why I wrote Revenge of the Hairy Man. And then I thought, well, this is good. I enjoyed writing that. As a cathartic experience, I'll write Portals and Monsters, which is imagining those creatures and where they came from, as a novel. And I enjoyed writing the first. Well, I was glad I wrote the first one. I felt better in my mind after writing it. The second one was a cathartic experience. And the third one, Evil in Olenbury, I wrote when I first got to Tennessee because I had, a little bit of time. So I wrote that, and then this next one, Monsters in Maryville, it's given me an opportunity to write slightly differently. I've written a lot about creatures, but this one has more of a paranormal twist, so it's a slightly different emphasis. So it became the reason I wrote those novels. The last 2 was more because I enjoyed writing. Whereas the first 2 almost came out of necessity, and then these next 2 came out of pleasure, in a way.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you find it, I guess you could say, you said you found it kind of cathartic to write the fiction.
Yeah, it's good for me.
So.
It's good for me. It gives me a bit of a creative outlet, and that's good for me. I'm glad I did it. I'm not going to write tons and tons. I'll write maybe a few more. But that'll be it. But I've enjoyed doing it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're still searching for Bigfoot here in America, and you're hoping
I
to
will.
make contact with the feral people. Will you
Yeah, I'll do
sit
that.
down and break bread with the feral people? Would you eat dinner with them?
I don't know what they'd eat. But it's a starting point.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You end up
You
on
gotta
the
be
dinner
ca-
table, right?
Got to be careful. I don't know what I do. I mean, I've met tribal people before. I mean, it's still unlikely that these people could exist. Let me just say that. I'm not trying to say there's a big tribe of these people out there.
No,
I've
no,
met
no, I don't think it's like
I've
that.
met tribal people before, including pygmies, as you know, I've and stuff like that. So I don't think I'd have a lot of problem doing that. We'll see what happens. I'm always rolling the dice, Tim. I'm always rolling the dice, and there's some cool things coming up. I feel positive about the first few months of next year. Put it like that.
There you go. Sounds good. All right. Well, as I told Adam when we started the show tonight, I'm pretty under the weather, and it's a couple days after Christmas, so we're all a little wiped out. And that's a joke for folks wondering, because this is not recorded. Well, it's live. We're certainly not live. So, how was your Christmas? Was it good?
My Christmas was amazing. I couldn't believe that you actually, as well as the pajamas, you actually got me finally what I've always wanted: a partridge in a pear tree. Tim, you're a fucking legend. Fucking legend.
Hey, I had to go all out for your big return to the show. So, and I had a fantastic. I got everything I wanted. It was amazing. Everything I asked for. Couldn't have asked for a better Christmas. Oh man. Well, it's been great catching up with you, Adam. I in a sense I want to apologize in a sense, because it's like when I kind of step back from doing the show, I lost touch with a lot of people who were on the program. So it's like I actually was catching up on one guest who I'll probably mention this at some point before this show airs, but yeah, I was when I was putting the shows together again, I'm like, I got to get in touch with this guy. And I looked it up, and he had died like 3 years ago. I'm like, oh shit. So it's good to reconnect with all these folks who've been on the show who were on the show for years and years and years. You were a part of the fabric of Binnall of America for a super long time. You were really an annual staple of the show, and I'm sorry that we lost touch for all those years when I kind of dipped out of the scene. But it sounds like you've had so many adventures. As I said, tonight we kind of filled the show here with a whole bunch of news stories of your.
Oh yeah, and there's more we could, but we'll do that another time. And I'm really glad. This has nothing to do with the podcast. I'm really glad that you connected again. It was good to hear from you, Tim. I always enjoy talking to you. I enjoyed hanging out with you. And, I want you to be well. So take it easy.
Oh, I'll be all right. Yeah.
Take it easy.
I'm on the back end of this, so it's kind of like I figured I'd get out of it by Saturday, and now I'm just kind of like, oh, come on, man, come on. But yeah, it's been great. It's been great. And I can hear, I want to sort of put this out for emphasis in a way, because I can kind of hear the skeptical people, but it's important to note, like you said, you go on all these adventures and everything, and you're just telling us the good shit that happens. Like you're not gonna be like, yeah, then I went to Des Moines, Iowa, and nothing. We went camping.
And I stood in the rain for 2 weeks.
Right? Yeah.
That's why I say that's why it takes so many years to get enough material for a non-fiction book, because I want it to be stuff that's interesting for readers, so that they get their money's worth. But I mean, I do have a lot of adventures. I am blessed. I can't say that I've lived a normal life, but I've never wanted one. So there we are.
Yeah, there you go. All right, brother. Well, I hope you have a very happy New Year, and stay out of trouble and keep in touch. And now that Binnall of America is back, hopefully on the regular, we wouldn't call it the revival if we weren't really committed to sticking with this new run of shows. That means we're going to get you back on again in the future for more conversations. Once you've accumulated some new adventures, we'll get you back on, and we'll hear about those and all that good stuff. So it's great to be back. It's great to have you back in the mix here on Binnall of America, and I appreciate everything you've done for the show over the years, and your commitment to to bringing us crazy shit. You know, I remember back in the day, you'd write me and be like, "You got to get me on. I remember with the portal thing. It's like you were like, I got a crazy story. You're the only one I can tell this story to. I need to tell it now because things."
And that was
crazy,
true.
So.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have done it. But I like the fact that, as I say, I like the fact that you've documented my adventures over the years. I like that continuity aspect to it. So I'll be back. I promise you.
Awesome. All right, brother. Well, thank you very much. It's been great.
All
I
right.
really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. See you soon, Tim.